I never saw it coming. Not like this. Ryan had been in my life for years. My husband's son, the tall, quiet one, the one who rarely asked for much. He had been polite, distant even during family dinners and holiday gatherings. Just another presence in the house I married into. But then, he changed. Or maybe I did. It started when my husband left for work trips more often, the house settling into an unfamiliar quiet with just the two of us. Ryan had moved back in after finishing school, claiming he needed time to figure things out. I never questioned it. Not until I started noticing the way he looked at me. Not like a stepson. It was subtle at first. The way his eyes would linger when I walked past in nothing but my robe. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me in the evenings, standing too close as we did dishes, fingers brushing as if by accident. The way his gaze followed me, even when he thought I wouldn't notice. I told myself it was nothing. A figment of my imagination, something I was projecting because my own marriage had gone cold. But the tension thickened, week by week, filling the spaces between us. The air crackled when we were alone, every small touch loaded with unspoken meaning. One afternoon, the heat between us finally boiled over. I was in the laundry room, folding clothes, lost in thought when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Ryan leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. I gave him a nevious smile, suddenly hyper-aware of how alone we were, how close he was standing. Suddenly, without saying a word, he leaned in to grab a piece of cloth beside me, his body inches away from mine. I shivered, and yet, something took a hold of me. I leaned back intentionally and touched his body. I felt his chest on my back. I wanted to play it off as accidental, but before I could laugh and wave it off, Ryan grabbed me. I froze, his hands on my lower waist, almost touching my butt. I could feel something else down there. It was his big thing. I could feel it pulsing, but I couldn't say a word, neither did Ryan. He pushed me into a corner, his hands now hovering over my chest. His hands wanted to press my chest and claim my body, but they were waiting for permission from me. But I couldn't react. I was frozen. I wanted him to go further, but that day, he didn't. We both stood there in the corner for only about 30 seconds. But those 30 seconds made me feel more alive than I've felt in years. After that, he took his hands off my body and took a step back. I turned towards him and our eyes met. We both didn't speak a word, but we knew what was going on. We could understand each other. We both wanted the same thing. After 5 seconds of eye contact, Ryan hurriedly left the room. I watched him walk away, my heart pounding. I knew then it was only a matter of time before something happened between us. It was just a question of when. 5 days later. I found him in the living room, stretched out on the couch, watching an old movie. The glow of the screen cast shadows over his face, highlighting the sharpness of his jaw, the curve of his mouth. I hesitated in the doorway, watching him, my heart beating too fast. He turned, as if sensing my presence, his eyes locking onto mine. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. I shook my head and sat on the couch beside him, not too close, but not far enough either. The air between us felt charged, like standing at the edge of something dangerous. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I asked softly, though I already knew the answer. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing against the back of my hand. It was light, fleeting, but it sent a shiver through me. "I think you know," he murmured. The silence stretched between us, taut and electric. My breath hitched as he shifted closer, his thigh pressing against mine. I could have pulled away, should have, but I didn't. My pulse hammered as his fingers trailed up my arm, slow, deliberate, leaving a path of fire in their wake. "I've wanted you for so long," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. My resolve cracked, splintering under the weight of everything we weren't supposed to be feeling. When he finally kissed me, it was soft, hesitant, as if he was waiting for me to stop him. But I didn't. I kissed him back, sinking into the warmth of him, letting years of restraint dissolve in the press of our lips. He deepened the kiss, his hands pressing against my chest, pulling me closer. The movie flickered in the background, forgotten, as I lost myself in him. By the time we made it to my bedroom, the tension had reached a breaking point. He undressed me slowly, savoring each inch of skin revealed, his eyes dark with something I didn't want to name. When he finally pushed me down onto the bed, his body hovering over mine, I knew there was no turning back. His hands explored every wunch of my body, tracing the curve of my waist, the slope of my back before settling on my hips, holding me there as if anchoring himself. His lips followed, warm and insistent, trailing along my collarbone, my chest, my stomach, each kiss sending sparks through me. I arched into him, the anticipation stretching between us like a drawn bowstring ready to snap. He moved slowly, savoring every reaction, every soft sigh that escaped my lips. His touch was confident, yet gentle, a careful balance between restraint and need. He went down on me, his tange exploring every part under my legs. I had never felt so vulnerable and exposed before. It was like he knew exactly where to touch me. When he finally unzipped his pants, I couldn't wait. I immediately put his thing in my mouth. It was big, hard, and hot. My lips tightly wrapped around it. He shivered and moaned. I knew he was enjoying it, and this was the first time I enjoyed pleasuring a man this much, and when we joined our bodies, his big thing stretching me wide open, I screamed. I couldn't hold myself back. I let go. It lasted for an eternity. We both had been controlling ourselves for so long, and finally today, we no longer had to hold ourselves. Once it was over, we were both laid in the bed. The weight of what we had just done settled between us. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch lingering. "We shouldn't have done this," I murmured, my voice barely audible. Ryan's fingers traced my jaw, his expression unreadable. "Then tell me to leave." I opened my mouth, but no words came, because the truth sat heavy between us. Whatever lines we'd crossed, there was no going back. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to.